Hey everyone, Matt Wagner from the Fighter Collection here, and today we're going to take a look at the F-5E Tiger II from Bell Sim Tech. Now, in the last F-5E Tiger II video I did a starter procedure, but since then I've had a couple weeks to learn a lot more about it, and I'm going to revisit it, but also do a taxi and takeoff again. But in addition to that, I also want to introduce you guys to navigation as well as landing in the Tiger II. But before we get into that, I thought we'd take a moment to take a look at some of the things we're working on for VR in DCS World. So let's go ahead and go to our options. And then here on the system page, we have a new preset for VR. Now, actually, I think I showed this to you all in the previous video I did in the A10 in VR, but the resolution in which the VR is presented is pretty low and probably pretty difficult to read in the screen. So I thought I'd revisit this in today's video. So again, we have the VR preset with settings that we think are a good balance between performance and quality, which of course you're more than welcome to adapt to your own personal preferences. Now, we also have a VR tab. At the top, we have the Enable Virtual Reality Headset, and this applies both to the Rift and the Vive. And when enabled and you start DCS World will automatically start in VR using the VR system you have hooked up. Now, below that, we have the pixel density slider that ranges from 0.5 to 2.5 and adjusts, as you might imagine, the pixel density of the image in VR. More pixels, more detail. I've been using 2.0 for the most part because I think it's a good combination of performance versus visual quality. But if you have a super high rig, go for 2.5. But if you need some more performance, go down to 2.5 if you want. It's really up to you to find that best balance. The next one is use mouse. Now, when this is checked, the cursor in the game acts as a mouse and moves around independent of where you're actually looking. Now, when you're in the simulation in a clickable cockpit, when you place the mouse over an interactive element, be it a button, a toggle switch, or a rotary dial, the icon of that interaction will be dependent on that. So we have different icons for button, toggle, and dials. Now, if you do not have this switched, you will use the system we currently have in the public version, where you have a cursor in the center of the screen that moves according to where you're looking. So if you're looking at a switch, then the cursor will be centered on that switch. And then if you press the mouse button, it will activate that switch. Now, the problem is, which we identified, and you guys did as well, is if you have interactive elements that are off to the side or even worse behind you, it can be very difficult to interact with those. And that's the main reason why we added the mouse functionality in there as well. But if you really want to do a good VR environment where you're not having to take your hands off the stick and throttle and fumbling for a mouse, then the other option is pretty nice. Now, the other part of this, though, of course, even if you have your view centered on a switch and the cursor over it, it means you still have to take your hands off the HOTAS to go ahead and activate that element. To eliminate that, we enacted a new control element in the categories called UI layer, which allows you to essentially map the different mouse functions, left, right, mouse clicks, and so forth, to HOTAS functions. So that basically means you can look at a function now by placing the cursor over it, hit a button on your throttle, and then activate it. That way you can be totally hands-on stick the entire time without having to take hands off to fumble for a mouse in the middle of a mission, which I think is pretty handy and also kind of a key part of VR implementation, where you can do the entire experience without having to use mouse or keyboard. Now, those are the VR elements that we're working on right now. There are other elements we're working on right now that are a little further out. One of those is the kneeboard, which is actually in the game right now. But the problem is, rather than being fixed to a set location in the cockpit, it's set to where you're looking. So right now it's kind of off to the right, So if you look off to the right to look at it, it kind of moves with the view, so you really never get a look at it. And the same thing happens with the menus and the text. In addition to the menu and text, we also have to adjust the font size to make it a bit more readable. But once those two items are resolved, I think we're pretty close to having what I consider kind of like a 1.0 version of VR implementation within DCS World. Now, another element of VR implementation, though, of course, is performance and optimization of VR for DCS World. Now, obviously, when DCS World was coded, VR was not really available, and it's not a VR-specific title. And there's only so much we can do to optimize, and obviously we're doing everything we possibly can to do that. But there are limits, of course, and we're not going to rebuild the entire DCS structure and graphics engine for VR. You know, maybe someday in DCS World 3, but it's not going to happen anytime soon, I would imagine. But you know, all in all, I think we're making really great progress in VR. Very excited about the future and where we're going with it. All good. So that's where we are with VR. Let's go ahead and jump into the F-5E, which I'm sure is why most of you are here. So we're going to go to the mission editor. And simple mission, I'm going to be taking off from Creech, flying almost due north up to Groom Lake, do a couple touch and goes, and then I'll do a landing. Go ahead and hit the fly button. Oh, before I do so, I will go ahead and put my handy Track IR cap on. Now, some of you guys have asked, you know, Wags, why do you use a cap and not the fancy IR LED detector thingamajiggy? For me, I really don't have any kind of IR reflectors behind me, so it's not a big deal. And also, I'm not a big fan of having wires hang off my head. So it works well for me, and I'm not going to try to fix what ain't broke. So that's why I don't use those. Let's go ahead and hit start. Okay. And here we are in the Tiger II at Creech. I'm not going to comment on that or that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and battery on and left and right generators. And now I'm going to contact our ground crew and get some ground electrical power. Okay, with that now I'm going to turn the beacon on, so this way the guys around me will have a heads up that I'm going to be starting the engines. And also now I'll make sure that's on. So, and that is our lovely F-5E by our friends at Belson Tech, also the authors of the F-86, the MiG-15, the UH-1, and the Mi-8. All beautiful aircrafts, including this one. Let's come back. So now I'm going to contact our ground crew again, and I'm going to ask them to start giving air into the engine so we can get these spooled up. So 8, 5, 1. Oh, I think I hit a wrong key. So I'll try again. 8, F5, and F1. Okay, now it's connected. So first we're going to start the left engine. 8, 5, and F3. And I'm going to wait to have it spool to about 1200. Then I'm going to hit the left engine starter and then move the left engine throttle from off to idle start. And there she is there. Start and throttle. And right now the aux door is closed, and they'll open up once the engine is up and running. And you can see that externally here as well. Right ahead of where it says Navy are the aux doors. And now you can see that they're opened up. And now we'll do the same thing for the right engine. Let's close the canopy, cut some noise. Unfold the mirrors. 1200s. So starter and throttle. Engine start. And go ahead and uncage the backup ADI. Good. Spooling up and just about there. Okay, so both engines are up and running. There we go. And now I'll go ahead and discontinue the ground powers.
Turn off the ground power. Copy. Ground power is now on.
Okay, now I'll turn off the engine air power. Okay, with that done, I'm going to kind of go from right to left and get the system set up. So, light test. Lovely. And lights. Console, engine instruments, formation, exterior nav, flight instruments. I don't want the flood. Up to oxygen. I got that. Pumps. I guess. Actually, I have no fuel tank in the center. I have it's a baggage. The balance, I'm going to set to auto. Check. I'm going to set the nav once we get to the hold short. Comms, I want for both top and bottom. I'm not going to be using the weapon, so I'll go ahead and put the light panel on. I want my taxi lights on. I can go ahead and power up the RWR. And the RWR and the radar will be one of the topics in the next video. Actually, we now have a little bit test that runs there too. Coming down, we have the flap switch, up and down, but we also have an auto position that will deploy the flaps based on airspeed. Very, very handy, particularly when in a dogfight. And we'll take a look at that once I get airborne. And coming back, we'll have the dampeners for both the pitch and the roll. And at this point, I can go ahead and remove the chocks. And there's the bit test I was talking about. Yeah, really no reason to put the radar on for this one. We'll take a look at it again at that next mission. Okay, once over, making sure I didn't miss anything. Brake, air brakes. I'll show you from the outside. A little below the aircraft by the baggage tank. There we go. Everything else looks good. Okay, let's go ahead and taxi out. Advancing the throttles. Here we go. And we'll taxi out to the hold short, and I'll set up the navigation system and talk a little bit more about it. In the audio, I have the option set up for helmet, so things are very muted in the cockpit, as they should be, between having the earplugs in and the helmet on. Okay, start putting the brake on. Okay. So navigation. Now, the F-5E Tiger II we have for DCS World by BST is the F-5E-3 version. And like it or not, this version does not have a navigation system for either ILS or VOR. The navigation will be done through TACAN, as well as your old-fashioned HSI ADI. So let's set up the TACAN. Right now I'm at Creech, and the code for Creech, I believe, is 87 X-ray. So I'm going to go ahead and punch that in. So 87 X-ray, transmit, receive. And I'll probably start hearing the TACAN code here in a little bit. It might take a little while. But below here we also have the power switch for the TACAN, which will then tie it to the HSI. Oh, there's the coded signal. Now here on the TACAN, we have a little caret here, and that points in the direction of the beacon that we have selected, dialed in down here. And then above that we have the miles to go to that location, and then the course. Pretty simple. And once we get airborne, I'll go ahead and punch in the TACAN for Groom Lake. I do it now, but the problem is that because we're on the ground and we have a lot of terrain between us and Groom, we're not going to get a good signal, and just static at that point. So I'll punch it in once we get up to altitude. But in the meantime, I'll go ahead and set the HSI for the heading to be the landing heading at Groom, which is 336. About there, and then the course up there is 351. Come back. Around there, that's close enough. And that's all set. Okay, so let's go ahead, check for traffic. All looks good. I guess taxi out. And I'll get lined up here on center. Throttle back. And brake. Great. Now the next step is I'll go ahead and hike up the nose wheel landing gear and give us a little more friendly AOA takeoff. And coming back, everything looks okay. Right, so I'm going to hold the toe brake and increase the throttle to 90%. And hold it here. And also I'm going to go ahead and increase my trim to about 3. All in the green, and release. Okay, full afterburner. And I'm going to rotate about 175 knots. And rotate. Gear. And as I get faster, you'll notice that the flaps have already retracted. And I'm going to increase speed to about 450 or so. And I'll do an implement and come back to cruise the other way. Okay, bring her over the top now. AOA settle, roll out. Okay, so we're coming back over Creech. Over there about 2 o'clock is Las Vegas, and off about 9 o'clock is Groom Lake. Now, unlike more modern aircraft, the F-5E does not have a autopilot system. So it's definitely going to be kind of a lot more manually trim to work. But like most things, once you get used to it, it becomes kind of old hat, and you really don't even think about it after a while. Now, also like we talked about earlier, the auto flap system automatically deploys and retracts the flaps based on airspeed. And even particularly when in a dogfight, I found it to be quite useful so that you're not having to manage the flaps the entire time. So let's take a look at that for a second. So I'm going to go external and bring it into a hard bank. And as we lose speed, we start to see the flaps come down more and more. And roll her back out. So a really handy function. Okay, heading north now. And for the most part, I found the F-5 to be a very docile aircraft to fly around, very difficult to actually depart it. And as long as you keep your airspeed, maybe over 325 or so, she's a very easy aircraft to fight with. You get below that, she can be a bit of a pig. So actually, let's take a look at what she kind of feels like when you kind of get in a stall position. And hopefully, I won't put her into an unrecoverable spin. Okay, get some throttle, get some speed. As you see, she really is a very well-behaved girl. So now they're at altitude. Let's go ahead and get some steering to Groom Lake, which TACAN there, I believe, is 18 X-ray. Alrighty, and here's our steering carrot for Groom over there. So it looks like we're about 180 off. Okay, now we're lined up for Groom. Now, obviously, we are here over the Nevada map, and right now most of the team is focused on the update to the Caucasus map for 2.5. And once they're done with that, they'll return to this map to clean up bugs and start adding some new features. But the big focus right now is on the Caucasus map. And that pretty much started with goal of just updating some of the textures, particularly the field textures. But over time, the team has decided to more and more update and add new features to that map, to the point it's turned into a pretty huge project. But it's, right now it's planned to be, a free upgrade, and I think it's going to be one that you guys are really going to appreciate, and probably a lot bigger upgrade than you guys are expecting. And it's also a big reason why, while we considered adding some third-party texture mods to improve the map, I think once you guys see what we're doing internally, you'll understand why we're just doing the internal. And in addition to the map, the team is also working on new effects, which we mentioned before. And like the maps, and for most projects for that matter, once it's either a pre-purchase or a near complete state, we'll be more than happy to start talking about it, do videos like we're doing right now for the F-5, and talking about them until we're blue in the face. But until we're at that stage, we're more than a little bit leery to talk about projects that are still very much in progress and can still change, be it the features, projected delivery times, and so forth. So we're just going to kind of focus our talk about new projects until they're very far along now. And you can see Groom up ahead, kind of center of the HUD right there, or not HUD, but the combining glass. And I'll overfly the runway about 400 knots, and I'll pitch out, lose airspeed, drop the gear, and pitch into finals, and maybe do 1 or 2 touch and goes before landing. And like I mentioned earlier, today we're just going to be focusing on the nav and landing. But the next one I want to start diving into the 2 sensors, which is, of course, the radar, but also the RWR. I'm particularly interested in the RWR because it's adding some new functions that we haven't had before. And with the radar, obviously it's an older radar, but to me actually quite interesting, and not its capabilities, but the things it actually doesn't do that kind of makes it more interesting to work. And to me, DCS is not about, the aircraft being, the all most powerful aircraft doing everything in the world. It's about, doing an aircraft as faithfully as we can, and learning the experience about what the aircraft can and can't do, and appreciating for, its peculiar aspects of it that separate it from other aircraft. If we wanted to do just the most powerful aircraft in the world, we do in Su-35s and F-22s, but to me actually it gets a bit boring of just doing those type of aircraft. It's, I think, more interesting to do an aircraft from different generations over different parts of the world, and that's one of the big aspects of DCS World that we've kind of planned from the start, was not focusing on one particular age of aircraft or location or country, but building a large sandbox to encompass all of them. And yeah, it's going to take a while, and there's going to be some gnashing of teeth during that process. But we have a very big and grand vision of where we want DCS World to be, and I think we're making some really great progress towards that. And I'm very excited about the future of where DCS World is leading, not just for our projects, but we have many very talented third parties that we couldn't do this without. Okay, getting a little bit slow. And I'm not going to do a wimpy straight in approach. I'll go ahead and do a overhead brake pattern. And fortunately, the F5 does not have a radar altimeter. So try to generally do these at about 2,000 feet. I think it's around there. Okay, about 400 knots where I want to be. Okay, I think about over the runway. Let's go ahead and pitch out. Yep. Bleed off some speed. And I'll lower the gear to about 275 knots. A little close to the runway. Okay. Geared out. Oop. Now when landing the F5, there's no ILS, there's no total velocity vector. It's more about having that sight picture and then flying the approach based on your AOA. Using your pitch to control your AOA and airspeed, and your altitude based on your throttle setting. Oh, pretty low approach, but I think it'll work. Okay, yeah, not too bad. A bit fast. Actually, more than a bit fast. So now I'm searching for the AOA. Where are you? Where are you? There you are. Okay, really long. Okay, let's go ahead and do a go around. Rotate. Gear up. Okay, let's hope this second one is a bit better than that one. Okay, doing the downwind leg. Okay, I have a good feeling about this one. Yeah, I like this picture a lot better. I think the one prior is a bit too close and a bit too low. And I don't want to pitch in when it's about at the tip of the launch rail on the wing. Almost there. Okay, I'll go ahead and put the gear down. That's about what I'm looking for. Okay, gotta be careful not to get too slow here. We're approaching about 200. A little fast. A little tighter. Okay, the picture's looking good. Okay, looking for my AOA now. Almost there. Okay, controlling altitude now with my throttle. Laying a little short, I think. Floating it. Yeah, floating it a lot. That's good enough for work today. Go ahead and pop the chute. And I found the hard way earlier not to brake too heavily with the chute out the back. Not a good idea. Okay, pop the chute all the way. And taxi here to the end of the runway and park out there. A little fast. Ooh, beautiful MiG-29s, huh? Okay, slow her down. Okay, park it over here. And good. Open up the canopy. And I'll go over the probably shutdown procedure in a later video. But I think this shows what I wanted to show today. Again, the navigation and basic functionality of landing, although definitely not two good examples of good landings. I'll definitely need some more practice on that. But again, I hope you guys enjoyed these videos. There'll be more to come, and I will see you next time. Thank you.